And so now we're going to go through the normocytic anemia. That means normocytic cytic anemia means that the size of the erythrocyte is somewhere between 80 and 100 femtoliters. And the most important thing over here is that and it's a very big group. We're gonna go very deep into the different subfolders, but the main point is to divide it onto if there is if the cause of the normocytic anemia is decreased production. So that would be something with bone marrow, decreased production. And this would mean that there is a decreased amount of reticulocytes. Over here, that's the place where we really need this really helps us, so it's below 2%. And, or if the reason is increased loss or destruction. Okay, so increased loss. And over here, if there is an increased loss but the production of erythrocytes is okay, well, what does it mean? It means that the bone marrow is okay, and I'm going to have increased levels of reticulocytes. And this is over 2% from the blood smear. So so this is the main division. And then if we're going to go deeper into the into the division, I'm going to go through this one. And if you want to divide it, then the loss could be due to either hemolysis, so destruction, or simple bleeding, more severe acute bleeding rather than chronic. Because chronic bleeding will cause what? It's a chronic bleeding, so rather than fast decrease of hematocrit, you're going to lose iron. So chronic small bleeding, like 5 milliliters per day, will cause sideropenic anemia. Also remember, if the bleeding is not like minor, like occult, but it's more severe, then in 2-3 days, as I said already before, because of the boost of reticulocyte, actually the average of the mean corpuscular volume of the erythrocytes will bit increase, because there will be more reticulocytes which are a bit higher, so it's going to go a bit over 100 femtoliters, but not as dramatically as in macro in megaloblastic anemias. And now we're going to go through hemolysis, and this is crucial. Hemolysis is crucial. It's a very common cause of normocytic anemia. And from now on, I would all of you like to remember that a sign of hemolysis, or signs, there is a triplet, very important triplet. You can check in the blood and in the blood smear, and if this is together, it's very likely hemolysis. And what are these? These are increased LDH, as a sign of lysis of cells, increase unconjugated bilirubin. Then what else? Well, increased reticulocyte count. And now I'm going to continue and go deep in the hemolysis and divide it even deeper. So we're going to jump to another page. And I'm going to put it here. And I can write hemolysis. And divide it even more onto, and this is like, it's not 100%, but it's a very nice division in a way. And we're going to divide it if the hemolysis is rather intravascular, or extravascular. The extravascular hemolysis means mainly that the hemolysis takes place in liver and spleen. And this is important, because basically if it's rather intravascular, you're going to expect, if the lysis happens in the vessels, you're going to expect increased hemoglobin, and if there is lots of hemoglobin in the blood, it's going to get it into the urine. Hemoglobinuria. Watch out, hemoglobin can get into the urine. Okay, yeah, not unconjugated bilirubin, but hemoglobin will get there. And because there's lots of hemoglobin, we got a molecule in the blood which tries to catch it, the hemoglobin, and it's called haptoglobin, and that's going to be consumed. So haptoglobin is going to be rather decreased. In contrast, with the extravascular lesions, the dominating thing is going to be jaundice and increased unconjugated bilirubin. And they can also have pigment stones, these patients. You can do also a special test. You can check the bone marrow in hemolysis and also in bleeding. If there is an increased production, you will see hypercellular marrow. But this just correlates with the increased production. We don't do that. It could be maybe very supporting the diagnosis, but you don't do this. But you should understand this happens in the bone marrow. And now I'm going to go I'm going to go and divide the extravascular hemolysis again, and I'm going to jump to another page. And if we jump over here and put extravascular. So again, with the extravascular, the main lesion is going to take place in liver or spleen, main hemolysis in the liver and spleen, and we can divide these into a immune distraction. What does it mean? It's going to be positive with Coombs test, and if it's negative, Coombs, over here are going to be all the erythropathies. And the erythropathies could be due to membrane defects, so membranopathies. Best example is spherocytosis, which is a mutation of spectrine and oncurine, and many other mutations, but it has to do with the cell structure. And remember, these spherocytes are very fragile, and they look beautifully. They're really spherocyte. They're beautifully red. Normal erythrocyte should have like a, because it's biconcave, this is a normal one, but this is a spherocyte because it's full of hemoglobin and it's beautifully red, and it has increased mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. So there's lots of hemoglobin stuffed in this spherocyte, and this spherocyte, remember, is very fragile to osmolarity. So you can do an osmolarity check, and they will burst. They burst in when there are changes of osmolarity. And the other pathies, erythropathies, are enzymopathies. And also hemoglobinopathies. But I'm gonna go on the next page to discuss these because I have no space. So I'm gonna go to the next page, and with the enzymopathies, the main disease is G6PD deficiency, and this enzyme protects the erythrocyte from oxidative stress, and there are people with decreased levels of this enzyme, and that's why they have crisis. They have hemolytic crisis, and the most common trigger for these crises is an infection. So they're having infection, they have massive hemolysis, and the point is the erythrocytes are produced, and as more they are produced, then let's say the older ones, they have lots of G6PD, but then as the production goes on and on, there are lower levels of this protective enzyme. And in case someone has an infection, typically the cells that will lyse are the ones with lower amounts of G6PD. So remember, for testing on the quality or the amount of G6PD, if it's after the crisis, you have to wait. You have to wait 1-2 months, sometimes 3 months, before you can test them for the activity of this enzyme. Because at the moment of crisis, you got rid of the, let's say, badly produced erythrocytes with lower amounts of G6PD, and then the, let's say, the concentration of the enzyme just after the crisis will be normal. So remember, you have to wait for the test for the activity. And other signs are bite cells. That means typically the erythrocytes with the deficiency, if this is a normal erythrocyte, then bite cell looks like this. It has a bitten part of the membrane. That's due to immune reaction, or I mean that it's destroyed. Remember bite cells as a let's say hallmark of these G6PD deficiencies, and also Heinz bodies, which is a precipitated hemoglobin in the cells, but you need a special staining for this. Special staining, not the classical Pappenheim staining. Okay, so these were enzymopathies. Remember, G6PD deficiency as the best example. And then another one, the last one, are hemoglobinopathies, and we already talked about this part, because the main example for the normocytic, normal size, normal volume cytic anemia with hemoglobinopathies or pathy is sickle cell anemia. And we talked about the hemoglobin S. Remember, as it changes in the erythrocyte, it changes the structure of the erythrocyte, and it makes a cycle, and this cycle is vulnerable, fragile, it's not flexible, and it gets destroyed mechanically and causes clotting, etc. This is in case of homozygote. Okay, if they're both alleles deleted, or not deleted, but if there is a mutation in both of the beta chains. Remember, if it's a trait, that is trait heterozygote. They are pretty okay. They don't have any crisis, but the only thing is isostenuria. Remember this. We talked about it. So their urine is all the time about 300 milliosmoles, and that means that watch out, if they are in warm environment, they could get dehydrated. They're not able to concentrate the urine too much, so they're losing water. So these were the examples of the erythropathies, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to get to the autoimmune lysis. And so over here we're going to get to the warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Warm means that the hemolysis happens at higher temperature than 30. So basically in the temperatures of normal body, with the normal body temperature. Remember, these are mainly IgG, and remember, in 50% we don't know the cause. We don't know. And the rest, we know it's connected with systemic lupus, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, or HIV. And this is the causes out of these diseases also, remember penicillin, remember penicillin, okay, first of all, and then remember allopurin or rifampin or lamotrigine. And this is a severe hemolysis as well, positive whether you tested if there's a hemolysis, you test it with the Coombs test. And remember, the only help at the end is with a therapy. You can give intravenous immunoglobulins, and if this won't help, you can do splenectomy. So just to repeat what we went through, the extravascular hemolysis. So if I'm going to go back, hemolysis, and we did extravascular, and the main signs are jaundice, increased unconjugated bilirubin, that's very important. And then if we went deeper, then you can divide the extravascular into negative Coombs test. So there are no antibodies in your blood, and you're going to expect this could be one of the erythropathies. It could be a membranopathy or enzymopathy, as G6P deficiency, or hemoglobinopathy, as you can see over here deeper, so enzymopathy or hemoglobinopathy, so sickle cell anemia. Or if it's Coombs positive, very likely it could be warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia caused by IgG, and the hemolysis happens in higher temperatures, over 30 degrees, remember this. So, and now if we're going to go level up again, and we're going to go deeper in the intravascular hemolysis. So I'm going to again jump to another page. And this is intravascular. So we're going to divide the intravascular hemolysis, and the main hallmark is hemoglobinuria. So if it's severe hemolysis, in these cases, you'll find out hemoglobin in the urine. And again, we're going to use a Coombs test and to divide them. And if the Coombs test is positive, over here we got the cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, and this is when the temperature goes below 30 degrees of Celsius. And the main molecules are IgM, immunoglobulins. And over here we think that it is connected, for example, with mycoplasma infection, or with EB, Epstein-Barr virus. And typically it can start with you see someone has a lung infection, and then hemolysis comes. And an interesting thing is over here the lesion or the let's say final destruction happens in the liver, and with the Kupffer cells, they play a role over here, although there is an intravascular hemolysis. So liver and Kupffer cell are destroying the erythrocytes, which have antibodies on them. They're antibodies, and they're catch up by the Kupffer cells. So especially in this case, in the cold autoimmune hemolytic anemia, splenectomy will not help in this case. Okay, so watch out for this. And if the Coombs test, so if we're going to jump to the other side, if the Coombs test is negative, we have many options over here. And so over here we're going to talk, it's an intravascular hemolysis, and it's mechanical, mainly mechanical. So, and it can happen in small vessels, so it's microvascular, and this is very important for you because this is a microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, and that's called, it has an abbreviation MAHA, and this is very important. So this happens every time there are blood clots in your microvascular system, and the erythrocytes flows through it, and it gets mechanically destroyed. So on a blood smear, you'll see schistocytes. You will see these schistocytes. So watch out. So that we distracted erythrocytes ripped off. And remember, there are many diseases, but of course you're going to remember in DIC there's MAHA. So hemolysis due to mechanical distraction. So in DIC, also in TTP-Has. TTP-Has is a disease where when there is decreased level of ADAM TS13, there is a big molecule, big polymer of von Willebrand's factor, and this increases clotting. Remember, it's also connected with E. coli 015787. So with the E. coli infection, and what is crucial with TTP-Has, if the cause is not inherited, it could be inherited deficiency of this enzyme, or E. coli driven that the enzyme is not working. In this case, never give antibiotics because you're gonna worsen the situation, and don't give thrombocytes. Watch out. So in TTP-Has, don't give this. This will even worsen the situation. And another example is HELP, and we're gonna talk about it. HELP again, hemolysis and elevated liver enzyme, and we're gonna talk about it in the bleeding lecture, and vasculitis. So all of these, but especially remember DIC and TTP-Has, they will cause MAHA. So mechanical distraction of erythrocytes. Then of course you can have macrovascular distraction. So it happens in the big vessels, and of course in the cause would be aortic stenosis, and also any prosthetic valves or mechanical ones especially. And you will see also schistocytes. And then infection. So for example, malaria or babesia, which is rare over here. And one more very important one, but for this one I'm gonna jump again farther. And that is, so if I will put the green, paroxysmal nocturnal hemolysis, PNH. And remember, PNH is a disease of stem cells. There's a stem cell defect, so stem cells. And the erythrocytes that are produced don't have decreased levels or don't have CD55. And this is an important cluster differentiation. This is a important molecule that protects erythrocytes from destruction by the C5 component of the complement. And when this happens, happens typically in when you get acidic. And when you get acidic, when you hypoventilate, and that is during the night. That's why it's nocturnal PNH, hypoventilation. So typically, when you're hypoventilating in the night, you get acidic, and this triggers the destruction of the erythrocytes. So typically in the morning, when they will wake up, they have black urine because it's thanks to the hemoglobinuria, thanks to the hemoglobin that got into the urine. So hemoglobinuria, morning. But as they go during the day to the restroom and they pee more, they're getting rid of the hemoglobin, and the urine gets again normal, yellowish more and more, and then looks normal. And again next morning it's black in the morning, and then it turns normal again. Remember, in PNH it's a stem cell defect, so it's pancytopenia as well. So not only erythrocytes, but other blood cells can be decreased. And what is so specific with PNH is also thrombosis. So remember, and special thrombosis, it's called BUD Chiari or Chiari syndrome, and it's a thrombosis of the liver, thrombosis of the liver vein. Okay, so this is Chiari syndrome, and this is so typical for PNH. So remember that, and also remember that PNH could be associated with aplastic anemia, could be aplastic anemia, or even acute myelogenous leukemia. So there are many associations with this as well, with the PNH. Every time there's PNH, you should be worried. So if I want to again summarize this part of the intravascular hemolysis, I'm going to jump back again. So we went through intravascular hemolysis. Very important is the hemoglobin and hemoglobinuria and decreased haptoglobin. And the subgroups of the intravascular hemolysis are coiled autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which is Coombs positive. So you're going to do a Coombs test to find out if there are antibodies, if you have intravascular hemolysis. And if it's negative, Coombs negative, it could be microvascular hemolysis, and remember MAHA, microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, typical schistocytes, and remember DIC and TTP has Adam TS13. TS13 is decreased. This is a very important enzyme that cleaves a polymer of von Willebrand's factor. And then you got macrovascular distraction, so aortic stenosis or prosthetic valves or infection. And very importantly, also don't forget about PNH, which is a hemolytic intravascular, causes hemolytic intravascular hemolysis. And over here, remember Chiari syndrome, thrombosis of the liver vein, and remember that it's a stem cell defect, so it's not autoimmune, it's a stem cell defect, decreased CD55 or no CD55, which protects the normal your own erythrocyte against the complement, and if it's not there, complement's going to destroy it, specifically in acidic environments, which happens during hypoventilation. That's why in the night and in the morning when they wake up, the urine's going to be dark. So, and now let's jump totally to the top, okay? And we're going to do the cases of normocytic anemia, which is due to decreased erythrocyte production. So there's something with their production. And I'm going to jump to another page again. So normocytic anemia due to decreased production. So decreased production. So in these cases, the reticulocyte count is going to be decreased, and the one of the divisions I like is to divide it into rather isolated anemia. So only erythrocytes are decreased, and pancytopenia, where all of the blood cells are decreased, so erythrocytes, so this will be anemia, but also thrombocytes, so you should expect petechias and bleeding in this patient, and also decreased white blood cells, which means decreased leukocytes and possible infection, etc. In cases of isolated anemia, you should think of first decreased levels of erythropoietin. And when will be? Well, this is going to be when the kidneys will start to fail, not only as a filtration organ, but also endocrinologically. So end-stage renal diseases, they will have decreased erythropoietin, and that's why there's going to be rather isolated anemia. And of course, the cure for this is to give EPO. And other cases, again, could be, especially at the beginning, the anemia of chronic diseases, again. But remember, majority is connected with a microcytic anemia, but over here it's normocytic. You can put it in normocytic as well, typically in early stages of anemia of chronic diseases, and also early stages of lymphopenic anemia. Again, when I'm losing iron at the beginning, still the erythrocytes will be rather normal size, but later definitely they will drop in size and they will be microcytic. And of course, with the pancytopenias, well, the problem is going to be in bone marrow. So, and first of all, you should think of aplastic anemia. As you know, in 50% of cases, we don't know the cause of aplastic anemia. But nowadays, there is a big theory about T killer cells, which are in the bone marrow, and that they're killing all the other stem cells and everything. So that's why if you do a bone marrow, if you take the bone marrow, you'll see there are no cells at all. There's only fat. But there are also, we know that drugs has to do with that. So it could be drug driven or some infections. Okay, but important is pancytopenia on its own, and that means so aplastic anemia. The thing is, if the people are under 50 years of age, very likely you can cure it with bone marrow transplantation. In case they're over 50, it's contradiction, and because the theory is about the T killer cells, typically, so lymphocyte. So you give anti-thymocyte globulin, and then you use immunosuppressives like cyclosporin, and tacrolimus. And in these cases, this combination saves many of the people, because now suddenly the T killer cells are suppressed, and the bone marrow just starts to produce again erythrocytes. So this helps in many cases, this combination. So either transplantation or if you're over 50, you can use especially the anti-thymocyte globulin is very important. And apart from aplastic anemias, of course, all the other bone marrow diseases, so like leukemias, they will at the end cause pancytopenia and also anemia. And also myelofibrosis also causes pancytopenia. And typically over here you see nucleated red blood cells. The myelofibrosis also is connected with the YAC2 mutation, so don't forget this. So YAC2 mutation. So with these examples, like the aplastic anemia, leukemias, and myelofibrosis, we could call this as a primary diseases of the bone marrow. In contrast to this, and I'm gonna have to jump to another screen again. You should think of all the secondary invasions to the bone marrow, which would be, of course, metastasis and or infections. Infection and metastasis, they also cause pancytopenia, and thus also normocytic anemia. So to repeat it again, if I'm going to jump back, if we look at the normocytic anemias caused by decreased production, we can divide them into isolated anemias and pancytopenias. If it's isolated anemia, whether it's something from outside which sort of causes decreased production of erythrocytes, and so decreased erythropoietin, or in both these cases there's a decreased iron levels, or iron is not getting into the bone marrow, so that's why the production is decreased. On the other side, we got the pancytopenias, so there's a major problem in the bone marrow, and it could be primary, so it could be aplastic anemia, leukemias, or myelofibrosis, and there are other diseases, but if you know at least these three, it's totally fine. And then we could talk about secondary causes of the pancytopenias, and don't forget about metastasis, or even maybe tuberculosis invasion. This could cause also pancytopenia, having normocytic anemia with it. So I think this is enough for the normocytic anemias. It's a big group and widely divided, but anyways, thanks for watching. So thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. And as always, check the description below for supplementary questions and other materials.